Hi, everybody. I'm sitting here with Peggy Rowe-Ward from Atlantic University. She's one of our mindful leadership faculty members. And Peggy today is going to talk with us about foundations of outstanding leadership. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for meeting with me. So I know everyone loves to do this, but would you tell us a bit about yourself, kind of introduce yourself to students and people watching?
Okay, my friend calls this the elevator introduction. So my name is Peggy Rowe-Ward, as she said, and I live in Taos, New Mexico, home of the Tiwa people. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have doctorate in education, adult education with emphasis on distance learning, and a master's in counseling. And I've loved the combination because I work in spiritual direction with clients and therapy, and I also love to teach. And what got me into adult ed was wanting to learn how people could change, and how we could change our thinking, how we could change our mind. It was consciousness that fascinated me. At the time, it was feminist consciousness, and I continue to be intrigued with consciousness. So I think and the combination of work for this course that's so good. I used to, I still do work in corporate consulting and worked with executives and CEOs and leadership development. And then the last 20 years, I am a Dharma teacher in the tradition of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And so I've taught mindfulness. And in teaching mindfulness, I worked with kids, school systems, churches, synagogues, organizations, medical staff. So I've worked in all kinds of arenas with offering mindfulness education. It was one of the thrilling things about being hired by Atlantic University for me. I usually have had to hide my Buddhist credentials, and they really don't want to know, or I shouldn't tell anybody I'm a Dharma teacher, but at Atlantic University it was an asset. And
It's esteemed here. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I loved that. I didn't have to hide it.
So that's an impressive background. And then you come here to us at Atlantic University and start teaching in our leadership program. So for this particular class, Foundations of Outstanding Leadership, what is the background of this course?
Yeah, I find it fascinating. It was designed by Dr. Jenny Wade, who was on the faculty here, and she was involved in the original research with David McClelland.
Yep.
And any of us that had Psych 101 might remember McClelland, right? That his motivation theory is probably the second most known to Maslow, with achievement, affiliation, and power as the dimensions he looked at. But Jenny was involved in 18,000 interviews with leaders.
Wow.
Isn't that something? And I get chills when I think of that. And so this course was designed around trying to introduce what competencies are. And McClelland's take, which is a powerful one, interestingly enough, in this field of leadership, there are still people that believe, and I mean academics, that leaders are born and not made. There's still a lot of theory going out all the time. And there's even people in the academy, both in the fields of counseling and of education, that believe people can't change. I am not one of those people. I believe that we can all change. And so did McClelland. He talked about some of the work he did with bigots and with racism and with other areas of development that he believed, through working with competencies and what he called competency clusters, that people can change and people can grow and people can learn. So that's all in my wheelhouse.
But isn't there something to that, Peggy, that what we kind of have this preconceived notion of a leader is just this grandiose Machiavellian style leader, but yet everybody's a leader in their own dimension, in their own universe. And it's,
absolutely.
You don't have to, Laura said, you don't have to be that powerful on TV person to be a leader. You can lead your own world.
Yeah, well, and the leadership theories and materials have both mostly been done with white men, mostly with white men in America.
Yeah.
Many of them haven't even looked at women, let alone anybody of color. And the old theories have been this man, the great man theory, it's even called that, and on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And it's why so many people that I'm always encouraging to be leaders will back away, because they think,
Sure.
oh, I'm not that person. I can't be that way. And I go, yay, I'm glad you can't be. Hooray.
Good, don't be that way.
Hooray. And this is what we're about at Atlantic, is really trying to develop the whole person and call on that leadership that's in all of us. And some of my mentors were my grandmother.
Yes.
you know, one of my psychic therapists. There's different people that have been my mentors in leadership that aren't the great man theory at all.
I love that it's called that, kind of in a loathing sort of way. I love it. It's fitting for what it is, but I think you're so right in when we think of leadership, or I should say when I think of leadership, I do probably consider the great man as my idea of what that is. And to break that notion down, especially in this course and then throughout the entire leadership program, is exactly what our minds need.
Exactly. Well, that to me, every course is about that, looking at how to redefine power. And power, again, with the great man theory, is there's only so much of it. There's a pie, and I'm going to keep it, versus how it can grow and expand with facilitation and opening the doors, how it grows, power grows. But that's not what we were brought up. And there's a belief we've got that can get lodged in our brain about it. I've got to hang on to what I've got. No sense sharing it.
Control, and people have to be scared of me to respect me.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. So you alluded to very briefly about competencies. So I know in this course there's 14 competencies. Right. So can you speak a little bit about what a competency is, and then maybe not all 14, but what that means for the course?
Oh, see, I even wrote them down because I knew there's no way I'd remember 14 in a short interview.
Or you could go through all 14.
Yeah. Well, for McClelland, again, he was really looking at psychology at the time was really centered on more of a therapeutic model. The people that were studied were not well. Most of our psychological theories are based on not being well. And so McClelland and his wife are really quite interesting characters. They were quite connected with Ram Dass and Marabi Bush and some of these really interesting folks that were trying to shake up the field. But a competency per McClelland was observable and measurable knowledge, skills, and attributes. And so it's this combination of knowledge, skills, and attributes that becomes a competency. And some examples, these are things you'll know about: team leadership, vision, risk-taking, strategic thinking, discernment, persuasion, resilience, excellence. So those are some of the examples of some of the topics we look at.
Nice.
And McClelland really believed that we also have Art of War in this class as part of looking at strategic thinking. And that's really a fun component in this class because people tend to have either studied it and loved it or don't like it at all, and really resist the couple of weeks when we really explore workplace situations with the Art of War. And that tends to be a real deep learning experience for folks.
And it seems most of these classes go deep.
That's the idea. And that's what we get with our students is people that are in leadership that have had lots of training. We have students that already have doctorates and masters that really want to go interior. They realize they know all the right answers. That's what makes so many of the leadership books so boring in my mind.
Right.
It's just cliche, cliche, cliche. So everybody knows to delegate, but why don't you do it? What's going on? So we all know that trust is important. Well, what does that mean? So in this course, we explore each of these competencies and we look at experiences that have been fabulous and also some that have been less than perfect.
Sure.
And so that we can learn, because our competency is built through our perfect mistakes In Japanese management, there's a difference between a perfect mistake and a screw up.
Ah, yes.
And we celebrate perfect mistakes and we don't celebrate screw ups. So in this course, we're also looking at situations with these competencies that didn't work out well. And then with the colleagues in the class, we explore that. What did you learn? What insights do you have? Now, how has this competency been built?
Interesting. So what would you say the student is really coming out of this course with? What tools are now in the bag?
To me, it's about expanding their self-awareness. And really, what I think is really important in our program is this does bring in some solid theory. And
Mm-hmm.
we introduce some of the solid leadership theory so that people have that. Even if I don't agree with it, I think people that come out of our program need to have what people put out there.
Sure.
We need to know about Maslow, McClelland, and some of the folks. We're looking at analyzing our leadership skills and how we can demonstrate competency. And what I find for the colleagues in the class is that they start doing stretches, like week 3 is on risk taking.
Mm.
And we talk about that in terms of power. When is it okay to take a risk? Is today, I used to come home and ask my husband, is today a good day for me to get fired? Because I was at odds with a boss when I worked at a medical center on ethics. And so we'd look at our finances and he'd say, yeah, okay, you can get fired. So I go back and take a big risk with the executive staff. So we talk about the power dynamics, the affiliation dynamics with all these topics.
It seems very real world oriented as well.
Absolutely. I think it's real practical, along with doing some a research paper, because I really like making sure that graduate students are developing their writing skills. Yeah. I was a person that showed up at a doctorate program at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and I didn't know how to write academically. In my very first paper, my professor didn't put a grade on it.
Yeah.
It was covered with red ink. I was horrified. So I also want to make sure folks come out of our program knowing how to write academically.
And being able to communicate at an academic level is really important for these students too.
Absolutely. This is how, there's a week we look at persuasion and how do we do that ethically and powerfully? And a lot of it is learning how to write or prepare an argument. And it's a brief, insightful look at the past, getting into the present, and having a vision. So
years ago, Henry Reed, who is a longtime ARE researcher and taught at AU, said university graduate work should give your thoughts the words and vocabulary it needs for you to intelligently express yourself. Because we all have these things inside we know are there. Maybe it's a feeling and we just don't know how to express it. I always think, even in my graduate work, that it gave me a better vocabulary and a way in which to get my point across.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially for me, I'm intuitive and I'm a kinesthetic learner and I'm intuitive. And so I just know things. But you can't go in an executive meeting and say, I just know it.
Right. Yes, exactly. You have to put words to that. And that's really, especially in the transpersonal psychology side, we're trying to get people to put words to that intuition.
Right.
And here in leadership, to be a good leader, I feel you have to be a good communicator.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. So we'll wrap up, but do you have any final thoughts? Anything you would want the students or the world to know about this course?
What do I want the world to know about this course? The word foundation is in the course for a reason. And I think it provides a wonderful foundation for the rest of the courses that people will take. We're working with the academic research, we're working with academic writing, we're looking at some of the theories, and they're going to get to investigate the one that makes most sense to them in that moment. So I think just laying that foundation. Again, I want people to have the academic foundation. And that's what I think is here.
Good.
Plus, people come out of it with more insights and awareness, and it builds our community of colleagues. There's remarkable coaches and coaching that happens in the course. It is not just me.
Yeah.
It's the other colleagues in the course.
A dynamic intersection of minds, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know you teach a couple more courses too. You're developing some. And so you're here. She's at Atlantic University every semester, sharing knowledge, encouraging students. And this is the first of many courses that students take with you and within the program.
Right, that's correct. So
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for listening.
You are so welcome. So if you want to know any more about the programs here, you can always go to atlanticuniv.edu or ask your professor, Dr. Peggy Rowe-Ward. Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.